Shipmaster von Gay could feel the temperature fall on the bridge as his vessel's navigational computer made its announcement. Now entering human-occupied space. Almost immediately, every single member of his crew began to tense up, as those assigned to the cruiser's scanner systems began to pay just a little more attention to their station and went over every piece of data they got. As the bridge crew knew that if something were to happen to them now, there would be no one to rescue them, especially now that they were in enemy territory. What was supposed to be a simple and quick war against the upstart species was now entering its third year. Despite having some early successes at the start of the conflict, the Rotundia Union soon found themselves being pushed out of human space, and soon found themselves being invaded themselves. The humans had adopted the tactic of isolating an entire planet and starving or bleeding them of resources before invading. It was a brutal tactic at times, but an effective one. It was also during this time that many of the Union's cargo ships began to vanish while attempting to resupply these isolated worlds, while others, the lucky ones, would return to friendly ports showing various levels of damage. The kind of damage that usually saw them being scrapped afterwards. Yet no one could say just what had attacked them. There was no warnings, and the attacks were as brutal as they were swift. Needless to say, being assigned to a cargo ship was soon being seen as a death sentence for many. Yet if the Union had any hope of victory, they needed to make sure that their planets were supplied with what they needed. This particular convoy consisted of 15 cargo ships, and were escorted by 4 Dehur-class destroyers and 1 cruiser, Gay's ship. The Dehur class was some of the more modern destroyers the Union had, as they had been equipped with some of the more advanced sensor systems the Union's tech core had to offer. While Gay's ships, a Galu-class cruiser, was one of the better-armed cruiser classes the Union had developed. Or at least, it used to be, as thanks to the war, this illusion was quickly shattered. Human warships had proven to be better armed, and literally outgunned most Union ships. Gay's cruiser, the Shining Path, was one of only a handful of Galu-class cruisers that were left, and was relegated to escort duties. Hopefully the cruiser would still be more than a match for whatever was attacking the convoys. "Shipmaster, we are receiving a message from the Deferrer," one of the bridge crew announced, referring to one of the destroyers with them. This broke the tension which had existed for the last several hours. "They say they are detecting an anomaly in grid 7564. They are requesting to investigate." "Very well," Gay replied. "The humans are probably using a stealth ship to track us." Sure enough, the Deferrer did move off to investigate, but ultimately found nothing and rejoined the convoy. Hours later, the destroyer Gokua also detected an anomaly and moved off to investigate, but once again found nothing and rejoined the formation. For the next 2 days, several more anomalies would be tracked and investigated, but ultimately nothing would be found. But on the 4th day, the convoy encountered a freak ion storm, and began to interfere with not only their communications, but their sensor systems as well. Yet despite this, the ion storm was seen as a blessing by the Union convoy, as using ion storms to cover fleet movements was a common practice used by the Union Star Navy. It was how they were able to invade human space, after all. But as the storm continued, communication between the ships became worse, and soon, nothing could be sent or received. Still, it was an ion storm after all, and this was not uncommon. As long as they remained in formation, it shouldn't be an issue. But when the cruiser exited the storm... "Sir, half of the convoy is missing," the sensor officer suddenly announced, gaining the attention of the entire bridge crew. Soon enough, the holographic display clearly showed that out of the 15 cargo ships, only 8 remained. Even more disturbingly, all 4 destroyers were also missing as well. A growing unease soon swept the bridge, as Gay tried to process just what might have happened. Alarms began to blare as the cruiser was suddenly rocked by an explosion. In space, several missiles impacted one of the cargo ships, collapsing its meager shields and destroying the helpless vessels. Moments later, 2 more vessels were destroyed, as massive fireballs engulfed them. They were under attack, but from who? Sensors were not showing anything other than missiles that seemed to appear out of nowhere and left little time for anyone to react. The last thing Gay would ever see was the front of the bridge suddenly being exposed to space before being sucked forward. New Perth Naval Yards, 1 week later. It was always a joyous occasion whenever a naval vessel returned to base. Even more so when it was a stealth frigate returning from what had been a successful patrol. The Seawolf-class stealth frigate were a rather new addition to the United Earth Navy fleet, and the UES Specter had only been in service 1 year. But in that time, it and its crew had more than made a name for themselves, as having one of the highest kill counts of any stealth frigate during the war. As the Seawolf class not only possesses advanced cloaking abilities, but had the ability to jam or confuse enemy sensors and communication systems. As the vessel pulled into space dock and latched itself to the station, the assembled crowds could not help but to notice that one of the crew had tied an old wooden broom on the outside of the ship, near one of his navigational antennas. A tradition which had been carried over from submarine crews centuries ago. But as the Spectre's crew began to leave their vessel to enjoy some much-needed R&R, no one seemed to notice the 20 new skull and crossbones now printed on the side of the vessel. A sign that the Spectre did indeed have a very successful patrol.